Hi there everybody, part 2 of this most interesting video, which is a present to the world. It's a Christmas present. I very much encourage you to watch part 1. This will make complete sense, even if you don't, but the backstory to what I'm about to cover now is very, very important. And if you don't understand or have the backstory explained, then this just seems like another another video, which it isn't. So what I'm about to cover here isn't up for debate. It isn't an opinion. It's what actually happened, and there is more than enough proof for those who have eyes to watch it and ears to follow it to understand the nature of the relevance of it. Now, one of the biggest giveaways as to what happened, and I've run this through a ChatGPT AI investigation, and that is this expression, thus. And initially, the answer came back as I asked, what is the probability that something like a device was used at this location? It said, the probability is very small because the expression ground zero came into usage greatly after 2001 and therefore doesn't necessarily mean what we typically up until that point associated with it. Now it can mean a multitude of things. So what I did is I then challenged the fact that you can't start referencing a term after the term that was non-related to the term before. And it rearranged its perspective on the basis of excluding any reference to what the official commission report might state post 9/11. Taking that away and referencing it solely as to the language and the determinacy of that particular expression prior, what is the percentage chance that something like that was involved in that? And it comes back with at least 60 to 70, 75% certainty. So the previous video, we've touched on Anton Zherkov, we've touched on the Strugatsky brothers, the fact of this non-linear warfare being performed on you, cognitive dissonance, the fact that you've got this destabilized perception, you don't know where's up, down, left or right, and you're becoming continuously more and more confused, and they don't seem to care whether you know it or not. So that's just to let you know the mind virus that they're putting into your head, or trying to put into your head, and the solution is here now on this video, part 1 and part 2. So, as I mentioned previously somewhere in the part 1 video, I'm going to step lightly on this one so that I make sure that it actually comes through to you. Because there are a lot of expressions in it that might trigger alarms, maybe even saying that might trigger it. Why it's important is everything changed from the 11th of September 2001. I mentioned in the previous video that George Bush Sr. on September the 11th, 1991 made his address speech to Congress following the successful outcome of Gulf War Episode 1, when he basically stated that a new world order was on the agenda, and it was going to be one of the main things now for bringing, should we say, national unity together. And so from that point, what we found is that these guns that have been aiming at communism slowly dropped their range following the scenario of Gorbachev stepping out and the Berlin Wall falling, and in effect Russia becoming a new nation state as opposed to being a Soviet. And so from that point on, we started to end up now concentrating on a war on Islam. This is also part of the video that I made 2 or 3 videos back about Constantinople has to fall because it's now, as we see, coming to a prophetic, biblical, almost end of days scenario where they're trying to play various religions one off against the other. And what I'm thinking is that they're trying to put or portray or brainwash you into believing such derogatory attitudes towards these Islamists and the Islamic faction, that when they are crushed or destroyed or beaten, if that's the way it goes, you'll happily participate and cheer as the next Hezbollah, ISIL, ISIS conflagration gets sent into the incinerator or the meat grinder. So I think that's where the play acting is coming. Why Russia is coming to the fore now is it's a Christian country, and I think what's going to be happening now is it's going to be a replay of the old Byzantine Empire against the Ottoman Empire, with maybe Recep Erdogan in Turkey deciding he wants to go and fill the vacuum in Syria. And in the meantime, Netanyahu is looking to spread territorially. So it's all tied in, it's all cyclical, and it's back to the drawing board. So what we have to look at is, on that day, September, a long time ago, there were many things going on. One of the things that was going on in the background was a guy called Donald Rumsfeld. Heard of him? Donald, old Donny boy, but not Donald Trump. Donald Rumsfeld on board a USS aircraft carrier on September the 10th, made an announcement as, I think, the Secretary of Defense, that amazingly they couldn't account for 2.3, wait for it, $2.3 trillion out of the defense budget accounts, and they've got no idea where it had gone at all. Nobody, not even the NSA or the CIA, we would be told, or any accounting ledger, or no bank in the world could find out possibly where it had gone. And where it had gone was partly in the cover-up that was going on in this area, and many parties were interested on the day. So, first of all, World Trade Center 7 was the home of the leaseholder of the entire site, a guy called Larry Silverstein. Now, I haven't been able to find this for sure, but I'm pretty certain a long time ago, because I've known about this information since, let's say, 2005, 2006, but I've never done a video on it before because there's so many people out there giving opinions, and like my father said, opinions are like arseholes, everybody's got one. So this isn't an opinion. Why I'm bringing it out now is it suits my purpose to show you how people are psychotically deranged and believe in things like the emperor's new clothes. The emperor's walking down the street bollock naked, but everybody's pretending he's got the finest silk suit on you can imagine. You're all going along with it, and everybody went along with it for the COVID episode. So I'm trying to bring some light into the hows and the whys. So I'm really only concentrating on how it was done. You already maybe don't know why, but you will know the how. When I finished, you might know a bit of why. The who is the collective, the people who are running the world, the 13 families or bloodlines that are connected from the Lees in China through the Grants, through the people who were related to certain monarchical bloodlines. These are the chosen people who are running the esoteric agenda. In truth, behind this, there is a lot of extraterrestrial governance or handling. So you don't think for one moment that it was the Clintons or the Bushes or Hillary or it was anyone else involved around it. They haven't got the brains. All we do know is what actually happened, and I'm going to show you why and how. So the why was a punctuation point. They were coming up to a period where you had to have a defining event to focus hatred on someone, whether it was the Al-Qaeda organization or whoever. But that's what was, just like the Gulf of Tonkin, just like Pearl Harbor, just like the burning down of the Reichstag by Hitler. This has been a common plot. Everybody knows it, so I'm not laboring it apart from saying they needed a defining event. And the moment that came in, you had the TSA, for example, in the United States, and all the regulatory authorities on security at all the airports in the world, changing now from being a time when they used to profile you by looking at you and going, yeah, this guy's got a turban on, he's got a beard, he's coming from the Middle East, he's got a suitcase, yeah, he could be a bomber. Whereas now there's a guy coming through with his two small children, he's as white as milk, he's got ginger hair, and he's going on a 3-week holiday to visit his parents, and he's got his mum with him. And this guy's a suspicious character who might want to blow up the whole fucking plane and everybody in it, plus his family. No, I don't think so. But they pat you down, they take your shoes off, they take your crutches away from you, and they have the old lady almost have to crawl away through the detecting device, and that's just how it's gone. So it's seasoning, it's getting you complying, it's Chinese Communist Party HQ delivered to your door by the fuckers that have perpetrated this. So don't for one moment think, oh, well, they wouldn't do it. These are the people who kill for a living. These are the people that poison and put anti-personnel weapons or mines down the disabled children. These are the people who use sarin gas. These are the people who use Agent Orange to defoliate in Vietnam. There are no limits to what they're doing. So the policy, I believe, in the late 50s, early 60s, the Port Authority, New York, before they would allow these 110-story monsters to go up, like the Sears Tower and places in Chicago, they wanted contingency plans in case these things had to be demolished. And I believe, though that part I can't find at the moment, maybe it's been scrubbed or sanitized, I think I had it before, they wanted contingency plans, and some of the contingency plans involved small nuclear devices to bring down the buildings. We'll look at this now because there's a lot of propaganda going on. Now, it just so happens around all of this time, 2001, we had something called the Iran-Iraq War. And what was used in what's called box zero, not ground zero, but maybe ground zero is here, 50 meters under the basement of one of the places. We have something called special atomic demolition munition. Look it up. What are the chances of Saddam Hussein and this being being adjacent to each other when the wording is used to protest the fact that weapons of mass destruction were involved, weapons of mass destruction in Iran. That was what Colin Powell was saying. That's what the Bush organization, Rumsfeld, Cheney, all of them, the same thing. Weapons of mass destruction, giving you the idea that it's either chemical, biological, or nuclear that was coming your way. So go and have a look. These weapons are man-portable. They can be delivered by individuals parachuting out of aeroplanes with these things between their legs. But more importantly, it gives the idea that small atomic devices are usable, allowable, and were in the arsenals and the storehouses of every one major parties in the world. The other thing I would like to bring to your attention before I forget about it is a seismograph. If I am lying or mistaken here, wouldn't be lying because that would say I've got a deliberate agenda to distract you from the truth. But if, as we are led to believe, that there are enemies of the United States out there, for example, it could be the Iranian government, it could be the arch enemy, the communists, whether they're in China or in Russia. It could be any malevolent organization, country, anywhere. What they have is, under the SALT agreement talks, the strategic arms limitation things, all of these countries, all of these facilities around the world, doesn't matter how distant, even in Australia, they have the ability to pick up seismographic data to find out what has hit a building or what's caused a rumble. If it's the signature of TNT is different than that of an exploding, should we say, fuel depot, is different from a nuclear explosion. So what I'm trying to say is, if Vladimir Putin or Xi of China wanted to come along and say, no, we've actually got proof of what happened here, we'll show how these people lied to you, they could easily come along and do that, and they could prove it. Now, yes, people could say, oh, it's Russian disinfo and all the rest of it, but they could show the documentation from the Times, from these research facilities and educational facilities like universities that keep all of this on record. So why haven't any of them come along and done it? Because the club reigns supreme. There is not one nation on earth that is sovereign, independent, post 1944, when it was all over and done with, and the trap closed firmly. So what did we have here? And I'm going to draw on this in a moment, so hopefully you can see it. I think it should be bright enough. What we have is a 400-meter approximate building. And within that 400-meter building, at approximately 50 meters below the garage space, at 26 meters, we have a kiloton device prepped and ready to go. And what happens is, when the is hit, we get an event. And we get an event which is totally, consistently egg-shaped. This material under said building being made of granite, and it just so happens that we're coming up to something else in a minute called granite, which is a P700 SSN-19 NATO designated, that says shipwreck missile, which whacked into here at that time to begin the day. So as this energy unwinds below the surface in that type of rock, what we have is, once it hits a path of very, very little resistance, we get a funneling. But there's two different waves. There is a crushed zone and a damaged zone, and at the center you've got absolutely almost nothing apart from a heat, a 0 point. So what happens is, one wave comes to here to damaged, and the crushed one comes to here, and then at a free fall speed of around about 12.7 seconds, the weight of this top piece, this having been exactly calculated to its kilotonnage for the 50 plus 26, which is 76 to 77 meters of resistance here required to create this event. And as you will see, once it goes, this presses down on the top, and you can see the whole thing pancake down, because this is what was under one and two that brought them down. Now the question then becomes, we'll pull in a little bit here, because what I'm going to do is, hopefully you can see this, we've got the position, the central position of the devices. And what we get, because I previously outlined this so I can make it show, if you actually look at the 9/11 Commission report and see the photographs, you will actually see that there are parts of these buildings that got left standing. This element area here, this part down here, and this is the reason, because we have the zone that took out one, and 2. And what we have over here is, with this one, we had, because this is a trapezius, a unique shaped building, we had, and it's 47 stories, you'll find that that's the radius here. There's the road, and we had a place called Fitterman Hall across the road, which was partially damaged only, and that was eventually taken down and decontaminated, actually decontaminated and taken down. So what you find then is that this is the scenario of the morning in question. We have, first of all, Donald Rumsfeld talking about his money. We'll get rid of him. If you have a look at the official reports, we find that World Trade Center 7 was the center for many things, many documents. It was also the center, I don't know exactly what additional things in, but it was an important control center. And what we had is, we had insurance, we had banking, we had Secret Service records, we had records of all sorts of things contained within these buildings. I haven't gone into too much detail on what, but you can do your own research on that. There was amazing amounts of financial records for bonds, in fact, that were becoming due on September the 11th, I think, related to Project Hammer, related to that PROMIS software. So there was a lot going on. So what I'm trying to say is there was a lot of cooperation and a lot of interested parties involved in bringing this down. So it served, just like this situation we had, as I mentioned in the previous video, where SAFRA was set up by the IMF. So the IMF, they set up that guy called Edmund Safra. The IMF set up Boris Yeltsin. The IMF sets up Berezovsky. The IMF sets up almost everybody and then profits from the mess that they created. The same things happened here. A mess is created and they profit and benefit greatly. So in World Trade Center number 7, the last one to go at 5:20 p.m. At 6:47 a.m., all of the alarms for all the complexes of World Trade Center buildings on World Trade Center Plaza were switched off. Nobody knows why, nobody knows who did it or why it was done, but all the alarms were dysfunctional, setting the scene for what was then to happen first. A P-700 NATO designated SS-19 shipwreck because of how it flies. Mach 2.5 speed of flight, hypersonic cruise missile coming in offshore, from offshore, to strike the Pentagon. Now, there are various factors that could be at play here. It could be just like, oh, there's been an attack on the center of government in the United States. Somebody flew an aircraft into it, I was told. However, it could also be a warning to the incumbent government that someone else was in charge, and if we can do this to you like this without you knowing about it, then we can do anything. So you better play ball. So it could have been a bit of a shakedown. But either way, what we had is a scenario whereby we had this place here called, and I've drawn it very well, the Pentagon. And we've got a distance from the Pentagon to the coast of 108 miles. The maximum range for this P700 Granite hypersonic missile is around about 360. So if we take an estimation, if we put it either at the 12-mile international waters limit, or we say it went to the extreme range and it's way out here in the Atlantic, then we'd be anything up to 252 miles offshore, which is a hell of a way for anyone to see. That gives it then at Mach 2.5 between 11.4 and 3.7 minutes. So you choose. It's flying fast. It comes in. Everybody says, even the photographs show that as it came in from the east, it came toward the Pentagon and then it looped at the last moment and came in and hit the Pentagon just above the ground. Obviously, it couldn't fly under the ground, and as it's designed for hitting ships just above the waterline, it came in and hit the wall on the Pentagon there at around about 2-3 meters above ground level. This thing is very clever. It usually flies between 50 and 100 meters, but can go at any height. And at the last stages, it comes down and flies at around about between 3 and maybe 12 meters above the ground till it strikes. So what we then have is this scenario of this happening first, then this here. So what we have is we have the first tower that gets hit by the plane is the second one to go down, and the second tower goes first. Have I got that right way around? No. Tower 1 goes down last. This one goes last. That one goes first, even though it was hit after. And the reason for that is quite simple, that everything was controlled from here. Now, I don't know 101% whether this munition was put in from somewhere here or somewhere else, but I would bet that it came in at a distance that from there to that point there is just over 100 meters. And here it's, I think, that's 107, that's just 100, just over. So if they were put in place as suggested here, not laboring the point too much, then that would have been a job for maybe some drilling company. And I wonder who has a drilling company. called the Boring Company. Any ideas? Some guy called Elon Musk has such a company, but the official time for this is probably around about, I would say, 50 hours. However, if they used the equipment that they use with nuclear propulsion, might be fitting in this particular case, they could do that distance quite easily, probably within just a few hours. 100 meters underground is nothing for people who've escaped coldits and dug tunnels generally. So that's the scenario, but then we come to the why. This one had to go first. This couldn't go because it might damage the line here for the detonation. So this went first, this went second, and when these towers seemingly fell, bearing in mind nobody actually saw one of these things go in, amazes me. So people talk about rumbles, people talk about the ground shaking, people talk about decoy explosions that happened on whatever floors to make it look as if the building was blowing. One thing I'd quickly need to show you is, and I'd forgotten it, is go and have a look on YouTube and look at the way that planes that go to their graveyards are dealt with in the what do you call it, the destruction yard, the wherever they cut them up. And what you'll find is this can, aluminium can, has got about the same strength as one of those planes flying into there. And don't forget that when these were built, the central core girders from there to there is approximately 2.5 inches. That's the same type of thickness of a front armor on a Panzer or Centurion tank. So there's 2 lots it's got to go through, and then the columns on the other side. So it had to go, the plane, to penetrate through the building, had to pass through that. This is aluminium. Look at it. It's nothing. And that's what's supposed to have gone through there and caused that to fall down. So it's amazing that people have swallowed this, that still, 24 years later, nobody pays attention to it. Why it's important is because it's part of the system I told you, mentioned to you, the DOPE, dope, deliberately orchestrated, planned or projected event. And this is what's being perpetrated, and why this is important is the name that they gave to it is what we would say taking the piss out of you by you thinking, oh yeah, just a nice name for a little explosion party. This is how it was brought down. This granite, another play going through what the rock under these surfaces is called. These were probably taken, this one particularly was probably taken from the Kursk, I think on August the 12th, 2000 in the Barents Sea, a Russian KY-class submarine supposedly went to the bottom of the ocean with 118 crew on board with 22 Granite missiles. So with nuclear capability, I think 500 or 5,000, can't remember, kilotons, no, 750 kilo warhead, 200 to 500 200 to 500 kiloton nuclear capacity, and a high explosive carrying 750 kilo, which is what I think this was contained. I don't think it was much more. So that's where they came from. These other devices, who knows, probably came out of Ukraine as the Soviet Union disassembled, things went missing. But we do know that these projectiles, these nuclear devices were supposed to be in the hands of Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, and they got those supposedly RA-115s and RA-116s out of the Ukraine. So I hope that that has been inspirational. I hope it's brought you some good news, because with this news now, as long as this stays up, you have the capacity to go through it again. You know something that is factual. You know something that happened. It's not conjecture. It's not opinion. It's not maybe happenstance. These are the people who are controlling you, controlling your agenda. And if they'll do this, what else will they not do to you? If you want to have some type of solution to it, I'd suggest you maybe go along to Area 52, because I like the place, Area 52.life, because if knowledge is power, and if I know this, it's more of a message and a diary for me to communicate to those people who try to control your lives, the stupid Starmers, the Bidens, the Trumps, the Musks, the Gateses, the Faucis, you name them, the Klaus Schwabs, that someone else knows not only what they know, but more. And there is something that we haven't even touched on here, and that is an extraterrestrial agenda that is manipulating in the background, that is looking to create this internecine war, this inter-brotherly war between Enki and Enlil, who are Niburian factions, Anunnaki factions, playing out in a compendium of total nonsense and complexity that isn't really worth us touching on. But go to area52.live, look at what's being offered there. There is more information coming on that soon, because what I want to offer you is the opportunity to protect yourself and make an impact, non-nuclear, on your life and those around you. And with that, I'm wishing you all a Merry Christmas, a good New Year for next year. One of my predictions, though, before we go, touched on it last time, Bitcoin, it was just, I think it's about 98,000 it's trading at. I'll give it target 1, target 2, target 1 of around 73,000, with a target 2 of about 52,000 by March 2025. In short, if you're in crypto, get out now. Get out now, everyone. Gone. And with that, thank you.